What does flow mean to you? Flow is a state of mind, a state in which a person becomes fully immersed in an effortless and continuous progression. To me, the ultimate goal in jiu-jitsu is finding that perfect roll with perfect and effortless flow. I'm Professor Hayden Martz, and this is the FlowBJJ podcast. Hey guys, Professor Hayden here. First episode of the FlowBJJ podcast. I have co-host Aidan here with me. He's going to be asking me some questions. Basically going to go down through the history of flow and the history for me through my journey to black belt in jiu-jitsu. We've got a few questions prepared and just want to give students that might be newer to our team a little bit of history. I highly recommend that everyone go back through and study the history of your lineage. There can be a lot learned from that. So let's get started.
So first, I would just like a brief kind of view on your upbringing before jiu-jitsu, like what you were doing before the jiu-jitsu days.
Sure. So prior to jiu-jitsu, I played some sports in high school and middle school, played basketball. After high school, there's not really much to do other than pick up basketball. So I started playing some adult men's softball in a slow pitch league in Rockland. But then once I tried jiu-jitsu, basically it was all in on that.
So how did you end up coming to try jiu-jitsu in the first place? How did you even hear about it?
That's a great story. So a friend of mine lives not too far away from here. He is a Knox County police officer. He is or was hardcore into the UFC. So therefore he got me into watching the UFC, watching The Ultimate Fighter, just kind of the typical stuff that you'd expect a mid-20s to late 20s guy to watch UFC all the time. One day I was at his house and he told me there was a jiu-jitsu school that just opened up and he wanted to go and try it out, but he didn't want to go by himself. So we tried it. It was actually at the MRC in Rockport. My initial coach there is Bill Thomas. He was running the club at the time is what it was. He was a blue belt, and there was just 5 to 10 white belts. The funniest part of the story was I tried out the first class, loved it, and my friend never came back. Not once.
Wow.
So here I am 12 years later, still training jiu-jitsu, and he came to one class, and that was it.
Wow, the one who got you started never came back.
Yep.
That's funny.
It's not that he doesn't like jiu-jitsu, but I guess time, obligations, and things like that just didn't work out for him.
So what was your first class like as learning from a blue belt?
He was a very good instructor. Obviously, you're looking at, blue belt level instruction, but that still can be very, very good. I don't remember the technique that I went over, but I do remember Sandy was actually asking me this earlier, what the first submission I ever got in jiu-jitsu was. There was this probably a mid-40-year-old guy there, first class, and I caught him with a guillotine choke. I wasn't really sure what I was doing, but I know I had seen it plenty of times in the UFC, and I got to the right spot and just put it on, and he tapped. After the round, he asked me if I had trained anywhere before, and like, no, I never trained before. And then, oh, you must be a wrestler then. No, I never wrestled either.
Just the common jiu-jitsu questions from a new guy.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. So what was the structure like of those classes?
Structure is actually very similar to the way we run things, just on a smaller scale. There may have been 3 to 5 people in class, sometimes, 8 to 10. But it was very, it was very informal. We actually were sharing space with this studio next to the rink at MRC. So we had to pick the mats up after every class and wash the floor. We had to put the mats down before every class. So it was like a ritual. Everyone that was attending had to pick up and put down the 20 or 30 zebra mats to train on.
So how many people from, say, the first year are still with us today?
Right from the beginning, Galen was definitely, he was there right at the same time, started the same time
Galen?
I did. Galen Ratcliffe from Belfast. He is a brown belt coach at our school right now. Greg Netto was shortly after that. I believe we had moved since then, but Galen was definitely there right at the very beginning.
And Bill moved you guys to Camden?
So we moved around a lot, actually, partially because of the way things were run. It was very informal. It definitely was more of a club than a school. So dues were inexpensive, which meant we could only afford a very inexpensive spot to train. So we trained at MRC for a short time. And then we actually moved the mats to, Bill had an office space in Rockport. So we moved the mats there, trained there for a while, sort of outgrew the spot. So we ended up renting a spot up above what at the time was Stone Coast CrossFit on the second floor of that building. CrossFit guys and Jiu Jitsu guys have an interesting relationship because they both think they're super tough. So it was like a lot of dirty looks when you walked in. There was nothing was ever said. It was just kind of like a feeling thing. So we weren't there a super long time, but we actually outgrew that spot as well, and ended up moving to Camden, the spot that you're familiar with, in the upstairs of the good old barn.
So what kept you going to each class? Just class after class after class? Like, what was the appeal to jiu-jitsu for you?
Just loving jiu-jitsu, man. Like, trying to figure it out. If you go into class hoping or wanting to prove that you're tough, those guys don't seem to last very long. They get burnt out quick. I really wanted to understand jiu-jitsu on a high level and just figure out the puzzle, because it's, people say it's like chess. It really is. But honestly, when I first started, I will honestly remember like trying to imagine myself as a blue belt was like the accomplishment.
Really?
It wasn't really like I'm a white belt, but someday I'm going to be a black belt. It was more like I just want to get to blue belt, so that shows that I know enough to be competent in the sport.
Did you think that you would quit after blue belt?
No, I never. I don't know if it was short-sightedness or what it was, but I just didn't see beyond that.
Did it become your life? Like, did it become something that you like? How often could you go to those classes in the early days?
So again, it was a club, and it was very minimal at the beginning. It was a 2-night a week. I forget if it was Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, but it was 2 nights a week. And then we added a third class, a Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m. class, which is still the class we have today. That was basically so I could get a third training session in before going to work at 8. So I could train 3 times a week, but only be away from the family for 2 nights. It's not fun getting up at 6:30. There's a small group of people that still do it, but it takes some dedication for sure.
So what belt did you end up getting before you became under the Tom Deblass Association?
So that's a lengthy story. So let me start with first. Bill Thomas, who was a blue belt at the time, I would consider him more of a training partner than a coach. He basically stayed about one belt ahead of me throughout our learning. So as soon as I got to, maybe a couple of stripes on my white belt, I started traveling to Booth Bay usually once a week to train with Aaron Blake, who I would consider my professor prior to Tom. He is I want to say he's a 4th degree black belt now under Joe Moreira. So super short lineage for him. Joe Moreira, Elia Gracie. Pretty easy to study that one. But he, I knew if I wanted to get promoted beyond, a couple of stripes on a white belt, if I was going to be serious about it, I needed to go down there and train under a black belt. So I would go down there at least once a week. He had a daytime class for quite a while, which made it easy. It fell on my day off from work, so I could drive down there. Actually super lucky, because anytime you can get a very small class with a black belt, especially back then, black belts are rare now, but they were super rare then, So sometimes it would just be me and him training. Other times there'd be, 5 to 8 people there. But he is his jiu-jitsu is beautiful, for lack of a better term. His technique is perfect. And my teaching style I would directly attribute to him. I teach exactly the way he does, just because it works so well for me, trying to be highly detailed. When someone gets the move, making sure that they've got it really, perfect, and before we move on to something else.
Did you two end up becoming close over time?
Yeah, I would say so. He's a busy guy, but we definitely, especially, Aaron's been through a lot in his lifetime with family stuff and school openings and school closings. At brown belt, I would say, so to back up a step, when my coach, Bill, he got his black belt from Aaron, and I was like a 3 or 4 stripe purple belt at the time. Bill decided he was going to move to Florida. So that is where the huge transition for me especially was, because all of a sudden it was up to me. We were either, as a club, we were either going to close down, at which point I would just drive, to Aaron's for all my classes, or he left it up to me to take over and operate the school. So as that was happening, about that time I got promoted to brown belt. And then Bill moved to Florida, moved back in 3 weeks, but that's beside the point.
And you continued through brown belt to train with Aaron?
Yes. Yeah. So Bill didn't train again shortly after getting his black belt, which is too bad. But sometimes black belt is a destination for people. Other times, for me, once I got my black belt, and it sounds cliche, but if you're planning on training until you're older, you're gonna spend more years training as a black belt than you will as a colored belt. There's a 2nd or 3rd degree black belt's been a black belt for over 10 years. It usually takes you that long to get to black belt. So, but Bill decided to stop training, even though he came back to the area. He didn't want to train anymore. So I spent I ran the school in Camden as a brown belt, and then I would go to see Aaron once a week in between classes here. So I would say I got closest to him then, because it was a lot of, once you get to brown belt, it's mostly fine-tuning your game and perfecting things. It's not really, it's not basics anymore. It's smoothing all the rough edges of your game to get to black belt. So I trained under Aaron at Brown for, I want to say 2 years. He decided to close his school down, which left us obviously in interesting spot as someone who's been a brown belt for 2 years. Typically 2 years is a pretty good estimate as to when you're going to get to black belt. It's a couple of years, at brown, but it didn't work out that way. So the way it worked out with Tom is interesting. There's a couple people that I wanted to see take seminars with. I knew throughout learning jiu-jitsu. One was Tom Deblass. The other was actually John G. Ribeiro, and still going to go to a seminar of his someday. But Tom was putting on a camp in Cocoa Beach, Florida, with Michelle Nicolini, and Sandy actually demanded that I go as a birthday present. Funny thing was, at that time, we were not connected to like the overall high level jiu-jitsu that we are now. Like the students we have now are very spoiled when it comes to that, and they don't realize it. We're basically one phone call away and one favor away from training with a top 10 grappler in the world, at all times. That wasn't the case when I came up through. We had Aaron in Maine, and there was no outside connection really beyond that. I mean, he would bring Joe in for seminars, but it wasn't like it is now. So this was like, in Sandy's eyes and mine, quite frankly, this was like our once in a lifetime opportunity to go to Florida and meet Tom and train with him for a few days. So I did that, stayed there for, I want to say 4 days, and met with Tom, talked to him a bunch of times, met a lot of cool people down there for sure that I'm still good friends with. But after the camp was over, in the few weeks after that, I just talked to Tom off and on just about the situation, what he recommended that I do now that I'm 2 years into brown belt with no instructor, basically. So he offered, I met him in Florida, and then I met him again at a seminar in New Hampshire, maybe a few weeks after that.
Wow.
And then
what are the chances of that?
Well, he was going to be at Port City Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So I figured, it's a couple hour drive. So I'll go down and train with him again and talk to him again. And over the course of like a month, we talked, and he decided that he wanted to bring us in under his affiliation, which has been everything we could have hoped it would be, for sure. Went to visit his school once I've been there once. Sandy and Haley and you guys have been there once as well. And I've caught a couple other seminars in Massachusetts and Costa Rica, going back to Costa Rica again. So just trying to stay as connected as possible. But after 2 years under Aaron, we spent a year under Tom, and he was planning on coming up. And I talked to him too. I said, I don't want to go underneath you and then just get handed a belt. Like, I have no interest in that. So I even though I've been at Brown, I don't want a belt until you think I'm ready for that. And he said that's fine. He understands that's how he would want it anyway. He wouldn't give a new affiliate a belt would be under them less than a year, regardless of the situation. You could set the world on fire winning everything, but that doesn't really matter. The optics don't look good. So anyway, we had Tom come up, which would have been 2018, I believe. Did a seminar, gave me 2 stripes on my brown belt, which was good. I remember leading up to that, really hoping to get my black belt after that 3rd year. And when I didn't get it, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because it gave me an extra year, gave me 4 years at brown belt. but that extra year studying Tom's instructionals, just studying everything I could find, really helped round everything out. I mean, nobody wants to be at a belt for 4 years, but there's plenty of people who have been blue belts for 10 years, you know. That's the one thing I would say. If I could go back and change anything, I would be, I mean, I wasn't ever concerned about the belts, but when we tell people like, hey, don't worry about the belt, just focus on getting better at jiu-jitsu, like really, really take that advice and
You
go
really
with
would
it.
have just rather have savored the moments.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, even getting promoted to blue belt, which I'm sure you feel like there's a little bit more stress that goes along with it when you step on the mat. It's just if you're a white belt, like there's no responsibilities, you know. You don't have to, nobody expects you to do anything. Nobody expects you to win. If you do something good, it's like, wow, nice job, you know. If you're a blue belt and you do something good, it's like, well, you're a blue belt, you should have done something good.
Yeah, you're expected to know things.
Right.
At a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The belt gets heavier each one you get, you know, and white and blue belt are the funnest belts by far because of especially blue. I would say blue is probably the most fun just because you have a little bit of respect from the higher belts, knowing that you've put in at least some time and you know some stuff and you've calmed down, but then you still get all the white belts that want to try to beat you up. You know, the young, strong wrestler wants to come in and see how tough he is, and it usually never goes well for those people. But
it is nice to see that it's you can't really say the same thing for, say, karate or taekwondo. Like, if some big, mean badass comes into a karate club and they're doing sparring, there's a chance that next belt up probably can't do much against that dude, but right. A blue belt can pretty much handle any new person.
For sure, yeah. And that's honestly a lot of self-defense schools will use that as a measuring stick for new people, you know, or for blue belts, excuse me. How could you handle a wild guy that doesn't know jiu-jitsu, but he's coming at you 110 miles an hour? Like, can you handle yourself against that guy? Mm-hmm. And if you're a self-defense school, a lot of times they'll throw gloves on people and say, go for it, you know, and you got to be able to protect yourself.
So going back to when you first acquired your own school, like you were just handed a club pretty much. You were handed a group full of people. What was that like? Did you, before Bill ended up giving that to you, did you feel like you wanted at some point in the future to have your own school?
I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest with you, at that point. I spent a good amount of time, like some of our brown belts do now, where you have one night and it's your class, things like that. And I mean, I was always there, you know, but it was not this, and I was always helping him, you know, when it was time to make a decision whether we were going to move to a bigger place or whether we were going to stay where we are, or, I mean, I felt like I was always pushing to get things going in the right direction, just growing.
So it was a pretty smooth transition. You already pretty much knew how a school is run in a way. Maybe not the best way, but you knew.
Yeah, I felt like I don't want to say I could do a better job. I felt like there's things that I could do to improve, you know. We just had mats, you know, on the floor, and that was pretty much it, you know. I tried to invest time, elbow grease, money into improving everything, you know. And honestly, there was a transition, but for the most part, I would say everyone, if not almost everyone, came through the transition. You know, we may have lost one or two people along the way, which that can be just attributed to life in general too. Mm-hmm. But some of our highest ranking members here at the academy now are from the original school. You know, we have Greg, who's a brown belt, Steve and Angie, who are both brown belts, Dennis, and Galen. So all of those people are from. They trained at one point or another. At the MRC at the beginning was pretty short lived, but once we moved to Bill's office, I think everyone that I just mentioned trained literally in a small office building.
Wow, so you had a core group for a very long time.
Yeah, off and on. I mean, people have things come up in life. You know, they have kids or they have job changes or shift changes. So things change. So I saw, you know, that you see a lot of times you don't see a guy all of a sudden for 2 or 3 months or however long, depending on, you know, life situations. But for the most part, yeah, those people have all been around for a while.
So when you did end up taking over the club, was there a big push to immediately start making improvements? Was there a big push to expand this thing? Or
100%. Yeah.
what were your first major improvements? What were your first major changes being made?
I think a lot of it initially was just trying to make as many connections as possible and improve on the space that we had. You know, one thing that I like and I think everyone else likes is a nice place to train. You know, the training is the same. If you have mats, the training is the same. But, you know, being in a nice, clean environment, having the ability to buy gear from your school, you know, having water and drinks and just like a positive environment where people want to be, I think is super important. And just once we started implementing that stuff, we noticed at least some growth right away. The other area that I really tried to push, which seemed to work well, is social media. Being on Facebook, being on Instagram, posting as much as I can remember to, which is not always easy when you're in the middle of teaching or training. But the academy was in this backwoods, basically barn, for lack of a better term. So social media was the perfect way to try to get people in there, because they certainly weren't going to drive by and find it. So they had to seek it out for sure.
What was it like taking in new students? Was it incredibly exciting? Was it stressful having to teach new people?
There's not a lot of stress in teaching new people. It's exciting when people get it, you know, and the light bulb comes on for them, and you can tell they really, really enjoy it. The hard part at first was realizing that not every person that walks through the door and tries jiu-jitsu is going to stick around. Even the guy that, you know, did technique and rolled a few rounds and talks to you after and like, oh, I love this. Like, I'll see you on Thursday. There's plenty of times I've had invested, you know, a lot of time in someone, expecting them to see them 2 days later at class and never seeing them again, you know, and it's like, that can be a little draining until you realize, okay, I just need to take it one person at a time, give everything I have to everyone, but also lean on some of the mid-level blue and purple belts to befriend those people too, because I can't be there for 30 people all in one night every single night, you know. But the harder part with our school, as far as teaching goes, is blending in the 1 to 3 brand new people that may have just shown up with the 5 brown belts that are there, and challenging both people with the same content. You know, that's not easy at all.
Now, when did your wife start training, and when did you bring your kids in to start training?
Haley started training at about 11 years old, I would say. So she's been training 6 or 7 years. But at that point, Sandy had no interest in training. For her, it was just it was a night of the week that I wasn't home. She didn't, I don't think she comprehended at the time what exactly jiu-jitsu was, because it's a lot more than just grappling. There's a family that develops, you become close with people that you under normal circumstances you wouldn't.
Yeah.
We have people that train here that are in high school. We have people who are lawyers and doctors and financial advisors, and all those people are like family to each other. I mean, normally that's not the case. Yeah. Outside of jiu-jitsu.
No, it seems doing combat with one another, getting really hands-on and violent and sweating on each other, it really brings people together for some reason.
For sure.
Well, when Haley started, was there a kids class going at all?
Very first kids class I remember teaching myself. I was a blue belt and I taught Haley and Maya.
Wow.
Yep. There's pictures somewhere online of me teaching them how to stand up and base as very, very small kids. But that was the start of it, and the kids class wasn't huge at first, which, I mean, right now it is. I don't know how many child students we have, but it's got to be around 50 or 60 between the different classes. So certainly not like that, but it tended to snowball a little bit. That's another area that I felt like could definitely grow when I took over the school, was putting together a kids class, because that's where, that's kids need that. It's year round. It's something that they can stick to. Yeah.
So I bet you got a lot of, different characters, a lot of strange characters, maybe even, and a lot. I tend to see people that are more closed off, that are more insecure, less socially active, really come out of their shell in jiu-jitsu. What was it like for you as a teacher to see new people grow as a technician, but also as a social?
That's probably one of the most enjoyable parts of it, to be honest. Without naming names, there's multiple people who are students, kids, teenagers, adults right now, that are completely different people from the day they started jiu-jitsu. There's kids that, walk in with their head down, afraid to say hi to anyone, and just in general, super shy, super introverted, with just no confidence, to see them after a month or 3 months of training become totally different people. That's probably even more fun than seeing someone who's successful on a regional level at a tournament, because that's changing someone's life. If you take a 13 or 14-year-old boy with no confidence, no skill, just kind of going through the motions, when he gets in high school, that's going to be a rough 4 years for him, and if you insert jiu-jitsu into someone's life and they're successful at it, skills aside, just the way that they carry themselves is different. It's going to make things much easier for them. And I've seen it over and over in the kids' classes. I've seen it with girls, with boys, teenagers, even adults, even people in the women's class. There's just something about it that gives you a confidence that you're not flustered by something. You're literally practicing self-defense every time you train in a way, and it builds confidence for sure in people.
Now, did you guys, like, what were the standards for live sparring back in the day compared to now?
In all honesty, they're pretty similar to the way they are now, which we probably should reel that in at some point soon. As we grow as a school, I think we need to come up with a way to fine tune that a little bit. But I'll never forget when we first started training. Quick story about Galen. We were at the MRC with maybe 3 months of training, and this huge visitor shows up, like razor shaved head, like probably 40 years old. Like, he came in and he didn't have a gi on. He was in no gi gear. It was a gi class, but like big dude, really big. And it came time for live sparring, and I'll never forget Galen in Galen's typical voice. "Hey, you want to train?" And as a white belt, with no stripes, and I remember looking at Bill, who was a blue belt at the time, who had fully intended on taking that guy before anybody else to make sure he was safe to train with. So Galen, yep, let's go. So they trained. It was fine. It ended up being fine, but like 2 or 3 days later, we went online and we came across that guy's profile with his like Naga gold medals around his neck, and his Facebook status was going up to Maine to choke some fools.
Wow.
Which never happened.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, live sparring was allowed right away, and that probably should not be the case. At Tom's school, you actually can't live train until you have 2 stripes on your white belt.
Oh, wow.
Which is probably the smart way to go about it, honestly.
What was it like as a coach bringing in new girls, new women? Was it stressful at all?
No, actually, it was. I felt bad for Angie, to be honest. She, I want to say she probably trained for 4 years as the only female in the school. That's asking a lot, to be honest.
She's not big either, guys. She's
no,
not.
She's good. Don't get me wrong. She's good. She's got good jiu-jitsu, but to be, and for whatever reason, everyone when we first started was huge. Like, there was a whole bunch of killers. There was, probably 8 people, and half of them were prison guards.
Wow.
That's what it seemed like anyway. So yeah, she hung in there, but it was really nice to start seeing additional women come in, and I really feel like that is partially because of the environment. I tried to change the environment up, make sure the place looked nice, looked clean, and then obviously we move into this new academy, and I couldn't be happier, with what we have here. I thought the other place, looked nice in the training room, but this is just a whole nother level to be able to have done this, which in turn has brought even more women, to train. So some women's classes have 2 or 3 people, but sometimes there's 10. So to have that many people, have women practicing jiu-jitsu is pretty awesome.
Now, was it a hard sell when talking to friends or even just random people, selling them on the fact of jiu-jitsu as a legitimate martial art?
No, I think that actually is one of the easier things with jiu-jitsu, for me anyway. just because it was put into play in the UFC, that really gives it some legitimacy that not a lot of other martial arts have. I mean, they're all legitimate in their own way, and they all have certain applications that work well for them. But with jiu-jitsu, I think it was pretty that definitely wasn't an area where you had to convince people, especially if they live trained on their first day. They were convinced pretty quickly, feeling smothered, even if the person doesn't look nearly as big or nearly as athletic, and you're still getting handled by someone who doesn't look like they should be able to. That helps legitimize things pretty quickly in people's minds.
When you started teaching, what belt were you?
I taught consistently at purple belt.
Gotcha.
Yep. I felt like, and that's an area, honestly, where I feel like I've continuously improved, and that's probably the area where I take the most pride in trying to be as perfect at teaching as possible.
That's awesome.
I'm not gonna be. I'm not going to win ADCCs, I'm not going to win IBJJF championship, but I can work on perfecting teaching so that I can potentially make somebody else an IBJJF champion, and there's people here in our academy that are fully capable of that, which you know that too.
When you go into teaching a class, how far ahead do you plan? Like, do you have a week planned out? Do you have a month planned out?
I would love to say that I do. And when things are going well, I may have a week or two planned out in my head. Like Tuesday night, we just went over the X-Pass. And I already have in my head that next Tuesday, when we're back in the gi, I'd like to go over some Toreando variations on the pass. But quite frankly, a lot of times I don't have a plan ahead of time, and it's just what comes to me when I see people need. A lot of schools will spend a month on one specific position, say top side control, and then going over all the different variations for a month on that position. That's a great way to do it. We have so many people coming in at different times and so many people constantly starting that I tend to jump around looking for what people need that I see. If I'm watching live rolling on a Monday night and I see this specific area where people are failing to pass the guard in a certain way, or they're failing to recover guard, or submission that people aren't understanding the mechanics of, then I'll start to gravitate towards that for the next class, just to try to fill holes where people need them.
I also noticed that when you have a big influx of new people, that whenever you teach the technique for the night, you tend to give a general idea of what your goals are in the position, and then you progressively get more advanced for those who need that, which I really like.
For sure. I think that's where, like we had mentioned earlier, that's the hard part to balance is, we don't have, we do have an advanced class now once a week, but we don't have the luxury of having specifically a class for beginners and specifically an advanced class. So a lot of times you're teaching to a guy who's been there 3 days, a guy who's been there 3 years, and a guy who's been there 8 years, So you got to try to start basic, give the new people a technique or 2 or 3 to work with, and then throw in a couple more advanced moves for the people at the higher levels.
Now, Did Aaron Blake have a game that you kind of could study off of?
He played a lot of butterfly guard, lasso guard.
What were some of your biggest takeaways? Like, what were some of the most game-changing things that you learned from him? Maybe not even technique-wise, just as a teacher or as a mentor.
For sure, from him, it was learning how to teach. Because, and again, I take a lot of pride in teaching, but he was a very, very good instructor. And I've said this, I've had lots of conversations with lots of different people. Being a really high-level competitor and being a high-level teacher, there's only a couple people in the world that are what I would consider high-level at both. Gordon definitely being one of them. But other than him, there's not a lot of people that are super articulate teachers, but also, at the top of the rankings. Aaron was an excellent teacher, breaking things down, super detailed. I would like to say if you sat through one of my classes now, it would be very similar to his. He's obviously a far better teacher than me. He's been doing it longer, but that you would see a lot of similarities in the way that we both teach, for sure. I would say I took that from him more so than anything. That and the ability to play a guard and allow that person to come into you, being, welcoming the pressure of someone coming in and then dealing with that with, butterfly guard and lasso guard and things like that, where, he's typically the smaller person in a round. That's not the case for me, but I still want to be very proficient from my back, because that's something that you can't fake. From the bottom, your technique has to be good, regardless of your size.
Well, and then later on you found out that from Tom, guard can even be a place where you feel quite literally no pressure. He sits in the half guard and he can never be passed. It's almost like you could just relax in a way. And no one new coming in can ever understand what that is like. Like no one new can instantly recognize that, especially wrestlers, like they'll come in and being on your back is quite literally the most uncomfortable place you can be in.
Yep.
And I don't think any adult male or female coming into an exercise class really feels comfortable being on their back. And then there's these practitioners that just love being on their back. It's like,
well, in any other instance, you're like, that's the most vulnerable spot you could be in, right? You're on your back, like, you're done. But to develop a game from your back, that's not easy to do, but once you do it, that's everything. Because top position can be learned along the way, especially if you're strong or you're big. Your top position tends to be pretty easy to learn, but developing a very good guard is not easy to do. And that's something that most people, me included, are always going to be working towards, is improving their guard.
Now, how big of a part in your jiu-jitsu curriculum would you say Tom became as you met him and as you went to his seminars? Like did you immediately start implementing his techniques in?
Yes, definitely. I played a little bit of at the time we called it Z guard, knee shield guard. Different people call it different things, but I was already playing a lot of that half guard The problem with coming up from purple and above, essentially without an instructor on a daily basis, is that you learn a lot of stuff by trial and error. So I may spend 3 months working out these details from this half guard position, only to watch 10 minutes of one of Tom's instructionals that spells it out perfectly, you know? But that being said, you can't, there's nothing you could trade those 3 months for, because you learn the intricacies of the position, where the person's weight is, and you learn all these little things that if you just watch a 5-minute video, you don't feel those things until you have a bunch of live training doing it, you know. But as soon as we became an affiliate under Tom, when I was in Florida at his seminar, his stuff, like, I was drawn to right away. But 2, once we got back, I started studying his instructionals, and I would implement them in my own game right away. And then once I implemented them successfully in my own game, had some continued success, and then I would start implementing that, teaching it to everyone else as well. To the point that it feels like that's always been my game, even though it's, say, the last 2 years out of, or 3 years now, being under him. It's 99% of my game now, to the point where when I roll with one of Tom's black belts like Miguel or Luke, I feel like I'm rolling. It's the same exact techniques that I do. Mm-hmm. Like they've been under Tom even longer than I have, you know. So it's all the same stuff. All the knee shield, the half guard, the underhook, the deep half guard, all that same game, just perfected even more, you know.
So besides receiving black belt from Tom, what else would you say he's provided you, in a sense? The actual act of getting the black belt is the absolute least of what he's done for me. Black belt aside, he, in case you don't already follow him on social media and you're listening to this, he is a social media guru. He is also an expert at running a business and a school. We have a Deblass Affiliate school owners Facebook chat where all the school owners talk to him literally every day. And he is very forthcoming with advice for how to operate a school, how your classes should run, how your students should look, how all aspects of business, how it should operate to be successful. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen guys in the affiliation immediately implement what he says, and other guys, you know, kind of not ignore it, but just kind of like, oh yeah, that's good advice, thanks, but then not implement it. Mm-hmm. I would say definitely one of the keys to the success of our academy here, in moving, you know, prior to moving, but definitely once we moved, is just implementing a similar style to how he operates his school. He's hard on his competitors, but he's also easy on his hobbyists, you know, and the hobbyists make up the majority of the school. That's the same case for here. Not everyone is a competitor, nor should everyone compete. But you've got to balance. You got to take care of all people with all different goals. You can't focus on just your hobbyists. You can't focus just on your competitors. You've got to really be everything for everyone, you know. And he's definitely very helpful when it comes to that. And he seems to hold an incredibly high standard, which maybe not all affiliations will go out of their way to push on their schools.
For sure. Tom's affiliation is not geared towards making a ton of money. He obviously he's going to be very successful in everything he does because he has a very methodical way of doing things, but he's not, charging huge amounts of money to be in the affiliation and then just, collecting a check and not helping. He requires a very minimal amount of money, but what he does require is he wants you to be on point with what you're doing, and he wants you to be successful, which is great. I would much rather have someone that truly cares, watching out for you, making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, than someone who's just mailing it in, comes up once a year, pats people on the head and says good job and gives them a belt. That doesn't do anyone any good other than the person getting paid.
Yeah, it's one thing for students to have a support group within Flow or any academy, but it's another thing for their teacher to not feel alone
For sure.
This whole thing.
Yeah, because it's not easy, and even with a support group, it's not easy, There's always something or someone that needs somebody, but I wouldn't trade that for anything, You just, if you own a school, it's expected that you help whenever you can, help anyone with what they need, when they need it.
How do you go about acquiring product? How do you go around? How do you acquire sponsors or affiliations with brands?
So sponsors, that's a touchy subject. So actual paid sponsors where, you're paid to compete and you get free stuff. That's a touchy subject for a lot of people, but, you go out and be successful, in competition and have a really good social media presence. And, you kind of have to put it all together. As far as connecting with brands and, accounts for the academy, that's something that I just sort of dove headfirst into. And really, we've had a good amount of success aligning ourselves with the right people and the right brands. The first of which was obviously Tom, but, getting connected with the We Defy Foundation, with Origin Geese, as a manufacturer being in Maine. There's lots of connections to be made. You just have to be willing to put the time in to go after them.
And does the same apply for seminars?
To a certain extent, there are some people I've inquired, for seminars, and it just, you either don't get a response or you get, kind of brushed off. So it's not necessarily easy, but more often than not, people do respond. I think with seminars, something I've learned over the past year or two is that you want to bring in people that are really, really good instructors. Like we talked about earlier, just because you're a good competitor doesn't mean that you're going to be a great instructor. The last two people that we've brought in for seminars, phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioners, but also phenomenal guys and great instructors. Both brown belts, but you wouldn't know it, nor should they be. It's just a matter of reaching out to people and finding the right people. There's people we could certainly bring in anytime we wanted, but it may not be the right person.
When did you start scrambling to find a new school, a bigger school? Or was there a scramble at all? Was there an urgency?
There wasn't. It wasn't a scramble. It just it worked. You know,
Did things fall into place? Like,
they did. We were 100% Sandy's idea to move and take a huge risk and move here. By the way, thank you.
thank you, Sandra.
It was right in the middle of the beginning of COVID. So it was September of 2020.
Yeah, that's a major risk.
1 year ago. Yeah. So I think that attributed to the successfulness, though, because, we're in this beautiful building at a semi-affordable rate for the next 3 to 5 years. So did COVID have something to do with that? Probably. This building is brand new. We're the first tenants to be in the building, and it's beautiful. It went unrented for a year. So that's pretty much the majority of that's COVID, and then we were able to slide in here, and now it feels like we've been here forever. I can barely remember some of the other places we've trained. The nice thing is, whenever a visitor comes in, I've heard, I don't know how many times, wow, this place is amazing. It's the nicest place I've ever trained. That's the perfect compliment for me,
Where do you see yourself in 5 years as a teacher? Where do you see the school in 5 years? Yeah.
I don't know about me specifically, but I have huge goals for the school in 5 years. For me, I'm going to be a black belt, and I'm still going to be training and teaching, but there are people in the school that I feel like can be highly successful. And so my goal is to make them the best version of themselves as they can be. I'm really looking forward to, 2 to 3 years from now when we have multiple black belts here. I think that's going to be a big jump too for everyone, because we're in this weird transitional phase where we have a bunch of blue belts, fairly fresh ones, and a bunch of brown belts that have been training a long time. And I think that's going to start to spread out more as time goes on, where the blue belts that are training all the time, they're going to be purple belts in a year or two. And then we've got new white belts will be coming in, brown belts that will be black belts. So it's going to be exciting overall. And I really look forward to seeing where certain people end up over the next 5 years for sure.
Do you think you'll be adding classes, removing classes? Do you think you'd like to have more competitions?
I have so many ideas. The first of which is this first episode of this podcast. I always want to look for ways to improve. There's no way I could see us taking away classes. I could only see us adding more. Mm-hmm. Basically, I will fulfill whatever the demand is, and try to just keep pushing to grow more and more. I feel like in the last 12 months, we've gone from being a small school in Maine to probably one of the top 2 or 3 size-wise in the state. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason why we can't continue to grow if we're doing what we're doing.
How do you go about acquiring new, highly dedicated competitors? Like, how does Tom go about acquiring them?
Tom has people walk through his door that say they want to be a competitor, and he puts them to the test. There's no middle ground. If you say you want to compete, you're gonna get the version of Tom that you do not want to see. But that's what makes elite competitors, because I'm sure that for every 10 people that come in and say they want to compete, 5 of them are gone within 2 weeks, or are saying, you know what, maybe competition's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. Not everyone has to compete. I say that all the time. You do not have to compete to impress me. But if you decide to compete, you need to give me everything you have and not ask questions. Just show up, train hard, do the techniques, and implement what I say. If that doesn't work, then we'll talk. But let's make sure I have a pretty good idea that it's going to work. We've done it with a lot of people so far. And a lot of what I do with our competitors is directly connected to what Tom recommends we do with our competitors. So it's been proven to work. So there's no reason to change the formula.
Do you feel like there's enough time in the day for you to appeal to both competitors and hobbyists at the highest level you would like it to be at?
I think that my schedule is very creative, and I can be anything that someone needs. I absolutely think that we can end up with someone at the highest level for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Things change, injuries happen, people's desires change, but I really think that, and I've been told that we have everything here that someone needs to be successful.
Yeah, we have strength and conditioning, we have open mats, we have the ability to do privates. You can even come in if you're really embedded in flow and study and train on your own time.
Absolutely. I mean, there's TVs here set up. You can cast your instructionals right to the TVs and practice them. There's a full gym to work out. There's a personal trainer who will write you a customized workout for the entire week if you can't make it to strength and conditioning, or you can come work out with the team for strength and conditioning. I counted this morning, there's 8 jiu-jitsu classes in a week. If you want to compete, show up to all 8 of them and show up to strength and conditioning. If you train 8 times a week and you strength train 3 times a week, you can't put in more time than that. Mm-hmm. Unless you're a 23-year-old, phenom. Not many people need more than 8 jiu-jitsu classes and 3 strength and conditioning classes.
Well, and apparently, after seeing last weekend's Who's Number One, all you need to do is train 3 times a week if you want to be the best in the world.
Correct. And practice your heel hook defense.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think that is the end of the episode for today. Catch us next time for episode 2. Thanks a lot. Remember, you don't need to move fast. You simply need to move forward. Life presents all of us different obstacles. It's easy to give up. However, get up, smile, and put one foot in front of the other. Everything works out. I promise you. Tom Deblass.